Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lisa and this is Growing on Vancouver Island. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of my suburban backyard orchard. I have many fruit trees in my backyard and I don't have the biggest backyard. Our whole property is 8,000 square feet. This includes the front yard, the side yard, the backyard, and the property that the house is built on. So let's take a look at the orchard and how many trees we got in this amount of space. Here we have my 5 variety semi-dwarf cherry tree. This tree is approximately 8 years old and it does have a decent amount of cherries starting to form on it. Here's a few little ones that are starting to form in the tree. If you can see, there's some there. There's a decent amount of cherries. You never know how many are actually going to ripen and mature, but we've got some good ones going on. This tree is from Costco originally. They have awesome fruit trees. And for those of you who don't know, I garden on Central Vancouver Island in a zone 7 to 8. And moving right along, over here, this is my now 6 variety plum tree. It started out as a 5 variety Costco semi-dwarf plum tree, and we grafted a 6th variety on last season, and it seems to have taken. It does have a little bit of a fungal / aphid problem going on, and I wanted to give it a little treatment, especially a pruning because it's overgrown. But I discovered some ladybugs that were mating, so I decided I should leave them be and wait a few weeks at least before I do any more pruning on this tree. It always produces fairly well. We had a couple years it didn't produce super well, but it's an 8-year-old tree, and in general it produces pretty well overall. It's a good, reliable tree. Again, from Costco. Here we have my coconut ice peach tree. This tree is this is its 3rd growing season. I planted it in the spring of 2020. And last year it had the most amazing year. It had 17 of the most delicious peaches that tasted like a tropical drink. But this year we had our coldest and wettest spring / early summer we've ever had on Vancouver Island, and our tree was just riddled with peach leaf curl. So I have treated it organically, and the way that I do that is with feeding it a ton of different types of organic fertilizers and soil amendments, as well as taking handfuls of leaves off the tree every day that are full of fungus. And it is actually making a pretty good recovery. Like, this part up here is all healthy, and it's starting to spread out the healthy leaves. We still have some affected leaves on here, which I'm slowly removing, but there is lots and lots of good fresh growth on here that is not affected by the fungal leaf curl. So that's great. Unfortunately, even though the tree had hundreds of flowers, I think because we had hard frost really late, and we also had a ton of rain that was not normal for our area, it just, all of the fruit that was pollinated, the flowers that were pollinated and the fruit that formed is not gonna do anything. I counted 3 peaches on this tree, unfortunately. Let's see if I can find one. There's one right here. So if we're lucky, we might get 3 peaches that mature this year. Kind of disappointing, but it's better than none, so I can't really complain about that, given the weather situation. And swinging over in this direction here, this ginormous tree is a Desert King fig tree. I want to say this tree is probably 4 or 5 years old. I can't remember exactly when I planted it. And this year, all of the figs are forming towards the top. currently this tree, I want to say, is about at least 10 feet tall, maybe even 12 feet tall. So I will need a stepping stool or ladder or other contraption to pick the figs. That is not an ideal situation, and after the figs are ready to harvest and picked, I'm going to be giving this tree a significant pruning at some time later in the season, because I don't want this to be a yearly thing where I have to climb a ladder to pick the figs. But the figs on this Desert King fig tree are delicious. They're absolutely delicious and sweet, very good, and a good producer. So next, on this side here, we have another Desert King fig tree. This one is a little bit shorter than the previous one. It has more figs on it than the previous one that I showed you. Let's see if I can get a good shot of all the figs. And the good thing about this tree is that the figs are actually growing both at the top and much lower down on the tree, like way lower down. And I'm not really sure why, because this tree hasn't had much pruning and my other tree has actually been hugely pruned since I've got it. So I'm not entirely sure why this one is producing figs lower down and the other one is producing them only at the top, when this one has almost never been pruned. If you know the answer to that question, please leave it in the comments below. I know there's all kinds of fig pruning videos out there, but I don't feel like it totally explains this little scenario that I've got. So if you have any insight about my fig growing situation, leave it in the comments below. Here we have a tiny little nectarine tree that I planted early this spring. It has yet to leaf out, and you might even think it's dead, but I am pretty sure it is not dead. All of the branches are very bendable still. They're not at all like they're going to break. I think it's just taking its sweet time to leaf out. It's probably focusing on root development. So my goal for this tree really is just for it to leaf out and show me that it's alive by the end of this season. That's all I care about for this year. And I'm hoping that one day we will get some nectarines in a few years from now. It's a tiny little tree, maybe 3 feet tall at the most, but one day it will probably produce well. The little garden supervisor has joined us for the rest of the tour. Probably be following me around now. Here we have another fig tree. I'm not entirely sure on the variety of this fig tree. It was a rescue tree from my parents' backyard. They did some major garden renovating and gave me a whole pile of plants and trees and shrubs and cuttings. And this was one that ended up here in my garden. It did have a fig on it, but I think it may have fallen off because I actually don't know where it's gone to. It must have fallen off or something ate it, because I don't see the fig anymore. But it was literally just planted late this winter or early spring, you could say, so I don't have a huge goal for it. I think it just needs to grow and develop this year. And maybe next year it will produce some figs, and I'm not sure on the variety. There's a sneak peek at its neighboring flowers. And here is one of my 5 variety apple trees. This poor tree, when it was a baby, got mauled by either my supervisor when he was a puppy, or possibly if someone came in our yard and broke it, but most likely it was a little zipper that mauled this tree when he was just a wee little puppy. And it was literally about up to here in size, and I almost pulled the tree out and thought, oh, it's dead, it's never going to recover. But my parents convinced me to keep it in the ground and just see what happens in the spring. And lo and behold, the tree sprouted buds, and I let it grow. And this is what it grew into. So this tree is, again, about 8 years old. It's very short and wide. It gets pruned quite a bit. And unfortunately, this year was the first year ever a lot of plants in my yard got affected by a heavy frost very late in our season. And it really damaged a lot of the foliage. But I'm not too worried about it because I am going to prune it a bit, but it has quite a few apples on it despite the situation we had with the weather this year. There's some more apples here and a good amount of apples up here. They're very tiny still, so they may not be easy to see, but I am quite proud of this tree for making it through some pretty adverse conditions this year. And here is an absolute baby of a fig tree. I planted this last year in the spring, and I believe it's called Ville de Bordeaux, if I'm saying it right. It's supposed to be basically a very small dwarf fig tree. I think maximum it'll get is 6 feet tall. And it has just started to leaf out now, like way later than all my other fig trees. So I do have high hopes for it, but I think this year it's just gonna grow up and become a strong tree. And here is my second 5 variety apple tree. I bought this right after our puppy mauled the first apple tree that I showed you. And it's doing very well, but interestingly, it hasn't grown that much in the, I want to say we've had it for 7 years, and our other one was 8 years that we've had it. But it does have a lot of apples on it, just like the other one. Here's a good cluster right here. Some here, more over there. There's some up here. Kind of hidden in the leaves, but there are a lot of apples on this tree. I'm actually probably going to have to thin them, but what I like to do is wait until at least the end of June to thin fruit trees, because we often have a lot of wind in June and a lot of the fruits will drop off naturally. So I'm just waiting for the fruits to drop off naturally, and we'll see what's left by the end of the month, and I may thin them out a little bit. But this tree is doing very well. Here we have another little fig tree. This was also a rescue from my parents' garden, and it is just starting to leaf out now. And the last tree I'm going to show you is a fig tree I planted last year. This one is called Chicago Hardy, and it's actually doing pretty well. It was so tiny when I planted it, and last year it probably grew about 2 feet at least, maybe more, and it actually did have figs on it last year, but unfortunately they formed quite late in the season and they didn't get anywhere close to ripening, so we didn't eat them. But I'm hopeful that this year, because it's a bigger tree, that we might get some figs on it later in the season. This is still early compared to last year, so I'm hopeful. So that is the tour of my backyard orchard. If you have any questions about the orchard, please leave it in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Have a good day.